All right, another episode of the Full Subjects podcast with the full crew. So shout out to AFK Media. This has been awesome. Agent Expert Series. We interviewed some other people. We thought we might know a thing or two as well. So we thought we'd interview ourselves and each other as part of this series and kind of share some of our wisdom. Obviously, been in the industry. Both of us have been in the industry for a while. I would consider us successful, not in a bragging way, but we do some cool things. And wanted to share some of our experiences with our listeners as well as instead of just getting on other people. So yeah, cool. You excited for this one or what?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of this feels like fake it till you make it a little bit, but no, we'll have fun with this. I think what we'll do is we'll kind of bring questions up and we'll each kind of give our 2 cents on what we feel about that. I think it'll be good because we're in the same industry, but we do different things in that industry, right? So we have different perspectives on things. I've obviously learned a lot from you on the podcast and just in general, and hopefully I've maybe yelling you a few things too. So no, I think it'll be good. So do you want to jump right into it?
Yeah, let's do it. Question one that we had for some of the people that we interviewed was, what is one piece of advice you would give to yourself on day one of getting into the business? So Cole, you are mortgage broker day one. And what are you telling yourself? What are you sitting down with Cole day one and saying, or maybe what are you doing?
I think there's 2 big things that jump out to me on this. It's surround yourself with people that have been successful in the business and figure out what works for them. And not everything's going to work for you. So we had another episode before this where like one of the realtors on that episode, and that's going to come out later, talked about cold calling. That might not work for everybody, but there's going to be people in the industry that have had success and they've tried different things and they know what has worked for them and what hasn't. And then the other one is just stick with it. Because I think the biggest thing in our industry is that you're unlikely to find success immediately. You have to stick with it. You have to build relationships, and you have to be in the industry long enough for people to go, okay, they've put in their time. I'm willing to now trust them, because not everybody's going to trust you right away. And sometimes time in the industry is enough for people to go, oh, they've been doing it for a while. Yeah. I've seen his posts. I've seen him help other people. Like that's how you eventually get to a point where you can feel like you're successful. And I mean, success is different to everybody, but I think those are the 2 big things that jump out to me. How about yourself?
I would say the same thing. I would take it in a slightly different direction. I'm trying not to, as we go through these, not just rip off Alex Hormozy quotes for the whole time, but I just think that like learning is what hard feels like, right? Like, okay. I remember sitting there on my first day or my first week being like, okay, like I'm licensed to do the thing now. Like, how do I do the thing? How do I get clients? How do I, have people to work with? And I think what you hinted at there is somebody might know you and be willing to work with you, but they might not be, actively being like, wow, Austin's licensed now. I guess I got to sell my house. Like, that's not how people make decisions.
Right.
But it could be something where, maybe in the next 6 months or a year or a couple years, that's going to be in their brain of like, hey, when it is time to do the real estate thing, maybe that's when you end up transacting with that person. So you're trying to working in our industry from like 6 months to a year from now. This was a great thing that Braden had chatted about too when we had him on for his agent experts interview. Like you're kind of working for the future. Like you meet somebody now, they might not actually be do anything for a couple of years. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's just about kind of getting that snowball and that momentum rolling downhill enough where you are busy and doing the thing in the future, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah. I would also say too, like, I'd give the advice that like, this business can be tough for lots of different reasons. Don't get discouraged. Like that's just part of being, doing what we do. I'm sure if you're listening to this, if you are another agent or a mortgage broker or the public, it's a very interesting feeling. Not that just because somebody talks to you, they necessarily need to work with you, but I know that you've had scenarios that you've shared with me where you get to the 1 yard line with somebody's mortgage and you find out they're working with the bank, or, in my scenario, there's been times where, I show people places and then they end up using somebody else. Like it happens, right? And it is what it is. But if you just continue to do the right thing and conduct yourself and build your business with integrity and doing the right things, if you put other people first, you will be successful. And it's just remembering that a lot of people don't understand how our industry works. And that's okay, right?
Yeah.
Your average person's probably getting a mortgage every 3 to 5, 8 years.
Right.
People are typically buying a house every 5 to 8 years.
Right.
It's just how it works. And that's okay. Cool. Talking about day one, if you had to start over today, what is the first thing that you would do?
First thing I would do, and this is advice for anybody in any, I guess, entrepreneurial endeavor, is reach out to the people you already know. Talk to those people, tell them what you're doing. Be like, hey, this is what I'm doing now. Although maybe I'm not an expert yet, like, here's how I can help you. Especially in my field where there's still that dynamic between mortgage brokers and banks, which you brought up just recently. A lot of people only deal with their bank and they might not even know what a broker is. And just even reaching out to your circle can say, hey, this is what I do. Here's how I can differentiate myself from a bank. And then really just asking them for an opportunity. That's what it is. And I think that's a great place for people to start. It's really hard to build a network in general. And the first place to start is with the network you already have. It's less daunting as well, right? Like, it's people you know. You're not cold calling anybody. You're talking to people you know. And I mean, there's different ways to communicate. It might not be a phone call. It might be a text message. It might be reaching out to people on Facebook. And like, that's something actually Ryan Oak talked about in our expert series. Is he used to contact people on Facebook and say, hey, this is what I do now. And ultimately, you're going to get some business from that. Maybe not right away, but eventually they're going to go, hey, my mortgage is up for renewal.
Maybe I'll call Ryan.
Exactly. So I think the biggest thing you can do is leverage what you already have, because it's so hard to get started. As you said, you're like, oh, I'm doing this, but now how do I actually do it? Like, I completed my courses, I have my license, but how do I actually get somebody to list my house or list their house with me? Or how do I get somebody to trust me to put their financing in place, to buy a home or to deal with an existing mortgage? So that's where I would start. There's a lot of other things that you can do, but if you're like day one, tell the people you already know what you're doing, and hopefully they will help grow your network organically. And then from there, obviously, you start doing other things as well.
Yeah, I think that's very well put. Like, what I think about when you say that is, if I was to start over today, and I guess this kind of goes back to question number one, there's a difference between doing things right and doing the right things. And what I mean by that is, putting yourself in positions to have conversations with people, and actually work on the business, not in the business, is ultimately the business, right? So, it's very easy on day one, or just in the business, to feel busy but not actually do anything. Like,
Right.
You go into the office, you mess around with your website, you do a social media post, maybe you're meeting somebody for like a mortgage broker for a coffee, or you're meeting up with another agent to kind of chat things over, or just work on the business, I guess. Then all of a sudden you've been in the office from 9 to 2, but you haven't done anything that's actually going to necessarily like get you somebody to work with.
Right.
So I would just go back to the fundamentals, like you said, of like reaching out to people that are in your sphere, are your friends, are your family, and letting them know that you're in the business. But also too, just tripling down on opportunities to meet people. So whether that is doing open houses, doing community events, things like that, just to kind of have your name associated with real estate. And then another thing too that I would probably do is just be really heavy on informational content. And I think that's what we've kind of done through our podcast. So, hey, there's news that comes out with the provincial government, they're changing tenancy laws, or hey, here's an update with mortgage, mortgage terms, or like even a couple weeks back, we did an episode on some of the rental income changes.
Right.
Right. People want to not only know what's going on, but your opinion on what's going on. And I think I would just triple down on that. It's because all you need is yourself and a mic. If you want, throw an AirPod in. It's very, very easy to do. But again, it lets your sphere know of what's going on, and is a very good way to find out if you know what you're doing or not.
Yeah, for sure. Let me add two things to that really quick.
Yeah.
Number one, try to make it understandable to people, right? Like you said, when it comes to sharing news, like I absolutely agree with that. Make it relatable. Make it like, okay, what of this do I actually need to know? And then the other thing is, don't be afraid to share what's still happening in your life. You don't have to be 100% real estate or 100% mortgages. You can still share family things so that you still look like a human being, right? And I think we both can agree with that. Like there's people don't want to be bombarded, excuse me, every day by here's what current mortgage rates are. Here's what like the sales stats are. Like that stuff's that can be interesting, but they want to still see that you're a human being. So having that aspect.
Yeah, only some AI newsletters that you could.
Right.
100%. What is your number one way of keeping in contact with your clients?
So I think the biggest thing here is this, something that Dean spoke to on this series as well, is having a system in place that can create touch points with your clients. Now there's different ways to create touch points, right? There's ways where you physically call them, you text them, maybe you're sending out birthday cards, Christmas cards. All those things are great because they're different touch points throughout the year. But ultimately having a system like a CRM that can keep track of not only your work that you're doing, but also your communication with clients. I think that's the biggest thing nowadays. Are people going to read every single email you send them? No. Are they going to read every birthday card? Yeah, there probably are. Like those type of things are a little bit more personal. And in general, the one thing I will say is text tends to be more effective than email, because when your phone buzzes, like you and I, if we have our phone in our pocket right now, we heard it. And now I'm thinking like, okay, I'm going to have to check my phone after this. Whereas if I got an email, like, yeah, it might also come to my phone, but it might not be as apparent to check it right away. So having a system in place that can help you reach out to your clients, but then also having a system within that to have touch points, to send out birthday cards, to send out Christmas cards. And that might be having somebody do that for you, or you might do it yourself, but that might just depend on where you are in the business.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense. I think for me, one of my saving grace with this is social media. It's a great way to authentically like keep in touch with your clients. So like whether that's Instagram stories or Facebook posts, like it's very, somebody posts something and it's very easy to like reply to their story, like, oh, that's awesome. I love, your dog looks super comfy or whatever. And it's just genuine too. It's like you kind of get excited or, yeah, it's just a really solid way to keep in touch. And obviously we've had Ty on this series and he is very high up in the social media, let's say. Yeah. And obviously some of that is public too, as opposed to just sphere and people that you know, but it's a really easy way to keep in touch with people. I even from stuff I post, I'd be stunned. People that you haven't seen in a couple of years. They're like, oh, well, congrats on the second kid. And it's like, wow, like you saw that. It's crazy. And obviously that's a big life event, but, whether you're playing sports or you're out and you run into somebody that you haven't seen in a couple of years, it's a great way to keep in touch with people and also let people know what you're up to too. So kind of personal plays.
And what I really like about that, Austin, is you're focused on the person side. You're not focused on the business side of things. It's not like, hey, here's my newsletter. Here's what you need to know about what's happening in the market. It's, hey, that's a really cool picture of your dog, for example. And that's a good way to stay personal while also keeping that connection that eventually, who knows, it might lead to business, it might not, but that's not why you're doing it. You're doing it because you genuinely want to build that connection with that person.
Yeah, very well said. So Cole, for you, as your business grew, what were some tools that you used to maintain the same service to your clients?
So I kind of spoke to it a little bit in the previous question in terms of using a CRM system that can help you better manage your time. Beyond that, I think the best tool you can use, and I haven't done it personally, I don't think you have yet either, is other people, to be honest with you. I'm at a point now where I'm getting there, if you will. I'm getting there in terms of wanting to have somebody else do some of the tasks for me, because it's not a task that is necessarily generating more business. It's completing the business that's already in the work or in the pipeline. So I think that's a big one. And I think we're both at a point now where we could use some extra help, and it may not, or it may add some to the business by doing that. But the big one here is going to be the CRM. So it's going to be a similar answer to the one before that. It's a way to keep track of what's going on within the business. And ideally, if you do a good job of this, somebody that knows how to do my job should be able to come in and go, hey, this is what's going on with this deal. And ideally they could pick up where you left off from. So
Yeah, so just having those systems in place is funny. And, even with the crew that we're recording with, this is something that they're wanting to get into more. But like they said, they want that system, that playbook of like when we do this with other people, this is the playbook from A to Z of
Right.
what you need to be doing. I think for me, as my business has grown, I'm very mindful. I think CRM is a great tool, keeping track of who you're working with, where they are at in the process. I think Ty mentioned this. Calendar is huge how scheduling stuff. So I am really big on time blocking in the sense of like, okay, this is what my weekends look like. These are my non-negotiables for my business of like, hey, if it's a weekend, you got to get out, be doing some open houses. If you're not, you're doing showings, like showing people products during the week, like, in a perfect world. And obviously I'm in a slightly different stage of my life right now with a couple of things going on, but before that, it was, hey, I'm doing some stuff for my health in the morning. I'm waking up early, starting my day off that way, getting into the office at 8:30, 9 o'clock to start working, time blocking what I'm doing, when I'm working on deals, when I'm working on the business, when I'm working in the business. And then also too, I think it's really important to time block, and kind of set boundaries for yourself. So one tool I've really used this year is, I'm trying as much as possible, probably should have put the disclaimer in at the beginning, but we'll throw it in at the end. But for like, subject removals on deals, I'm saying, hey, look, like this needs to be done by 7 o'clock. I'm not waiting until 11:59 at night to find out if you've got financing or not on a deal. Like at 5 o'clock, the banks close, if your financing is approved. Exactly. Either you have the bank draft or you don't. So like, I think with that too, that speaks to a bigger picture. And, this might fall into some of the other questions, but with business, people will respond and meet the expectation that you give. So, with that as an example, even with your clients, if you are responding at all times, you're reinforcing that you can be available at all times. And I think that availability is important, but, if an agent on the other end is calling you at 11 o'clock at night to find out if the, countertops or quartz are branded, that's probably something that you can get back to the next day. So there's urgent matters and there's stuff that you need to respond to right away. And there's stuff that you can respond to when you need to. And, thinking back to day one, Austin, everything was like stage 5, problem. And now I think it's like, with certain things, it's like that can wait till tomorrow. Like that's not a, stage 5 issue that we got to deal with right now.
And you learn that as you do the business, right? You're like, it seems like a big deal at first because you want to be so reliable that if they text you, you've already replied before they even hit send kind of thing. Like you want to be that person. And there's value in that in the sense that like, they're going to know that they can rely on you, but there has to be boundaries within that because like you said, not everything's as important as everything else. And you got to be careful sometimes about what you tell the client's important and what's not important, right? Like, but I'll throw this one back to you because you kind of actually touched on it a little bit. So what daily habits help you remain consistent? So you talked about some stuff that you do. We're both fathers. It's not always easy to be consistent with that because sometimes your kids wake up early, sometimes they don't. Sometimes things change, right? So what are some things that you like to do or that you try to do to help you remain consistent?
Yeah, I think health is super important. Yeah, I think an underrated one is sleep as well, and that isn't as easy with a newborn. Do your best, but also too like getting stuff done and being prepared for the next day. So whether that means that you're meal prepping your food, so you're not getting fast foods, finding some time for your fitness or health, whether that's playing sports or whether that's, doing a workout class at the gym or going for walks, like you need that time. Yeah, you genuinely do. Like obviously before real estate, I came from a fitness background and sure using that degree right now. But what I did learn is that fitness and health is, that's not a destination, it's a journey. And with that too, it doesn't mean that every time you go to the gym, you need to beat your weights or beat your time. Like maybe that's just maintenance. Maybe that's like, hey, if I can, and I've used this example before, if you're running a marathon in 4 hours, maybe that is 5 years later, still being able to do that. Like maintenance is a great goal, especially as we get older. As far as other habits, I think it's that big adage of motivation versus discipline, right? And like, yeah, you can, I think it's Chris Williamson that says this, or maybe he's quoting somebody else, but like, missing, when it comes to habits, like, missing something is a mistake. Missing something 2 days in a row is the start of a new habit.
Right.
So it's just about being honest with yourself, picking what you're going to be good at and picking what you're going to suck at. And that's okay. If there's a period in your life where, maybe you're not working out as much because you've got other things on your plate or whatever, but it's just about picking what you're going to suck at.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, because I'm guilty of this. Like sometimes I try to do too many things. Like I want to read this many books this year. I want to do this. And too many things causes us often to not do any of those things, right? So I will answer this question though. So I'm very similar in the sense that physical exercise is big for me, not only because of the physical benefits, but the mental benefits. Not to mention it also helps you sleep typically better. So all those things are tied into it. So that's something I try to make time for every day. Sometimes it's in the morning. Sometimes I do it at lunch. Like I'm fortunate that I have a bit of a gym at home, and a lot of my work is done at home. So maybe I do it then. I've started running too. I hate running, absolutely hate running. But it's one of those things when you did it, I'm doing it because I don't like it. I'm doing it because I wanted to work towards something that I don't necessarily like, but I have a goal in mind and I want to work towards that. Another big habit for me is I'm a to-do list kind of guy. Like I like to sit down before I start the day and say, okay, here's the things I need to do. And then ideally prioritize those things too, of like, these are the things that need to get done first. And then as I work through those, if I can't get everything done, what's okay to push to tomorrow. But that's big for me, is setting, I guess, a focus for what things need to get done in a given day, has helped me get more things done. I'd say I'm pretty good at getting things done when I know what I need to get done. It's just sometimes I'm like, what do I need to do? If I don't have that focus, then it can take me longer to do things. But the two big ones for sure are going to be the physical activity, as well as setting up myself up to succeed that day by having a list of things that I need to do, and then prioritizing those things. Do you want to ask me this one, or do you want me to throw this one back to you?
I'll ask you first. Sure. What's a mistake that you see a lot of business owners make?
This is a tough question, because this is a general question in terms of like, it can be any type of business. Now, obviously we work in the real estate industry. In our industry, it kind of goes back to something I've already said. It's just stick with it. I think that's a big thing that a lot of people do, is they don't do it long enough. But then with that, what's tricky is they don't give it enough time to work, but at the same time, they sometimes do the opposite, where they try the same thing repeatedly and it's not working, and they're like, okay, I need to pivot within that. So it's a fine line, but I would say the biggest part of that is just stick with it. If you've set out a well-designed plan and things are progressing, you're not always going to see those massive progressions where things are going to, like, for example, in our industry, you're not necessarily going to see your volume increase 200% year over year, but maybe over the course of 10 years, your volume start to increase to a level where you're like, wow, I would have never even thought I could do that much volume, right? So like year over year, things are going to change, but you stuck with it long enough to see that success. I think that's the biggest thing for people, is not sticking with it long enough to see the benefit of completing what they were trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think that's very well said, and I would kind of piggyback on that. I think that that challenge is often like, this is what hard feels like. And again, I go back to Chris Williamson and Alex Hormozy, and this is going to tie into one of the other answers that from one of the questions, but
free advertising.
Yeah, free advertising. Please come on our podcast. But with that, I think it's very easy to think that's like, oh, well, I've done my best, this needs to work. And one of my favorite quotes among lots of them is, don't do your best, do what's required. And in a lot of cases, in a lot of scenarios, your best, unfortunately, isn't good enough. Right? And that might mean that you need to learn new skills. Maybe that means that you need to do things differently. But if the inputs that you're doing is not giving the output or the result that you want, something needs to change in order to get there. So I would say that's part of it, but also, like we chatted about earlier, sometimes you just focus on the right things. Like by the time you come into the office and do a social post, blah, 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 that probably isn't going to turn into somebody picking up the phone and calling you. Like you have to go and find those people to work with you. What's a moment or event in your career so far that's taught you a valuable lesson, and what was the lesson?
That's a good question. I think what comes to mind for me I say that's a good question. I wrote the question. This is probably my own tires there.
Yeah, no deal.
I think it was probably the first time I lost a client, because it made me realize that just because they're working with you doesn't mean they have to stay with you. And it wasn't necessarily anything I did wrong. Like, you gave an example at the beginning, like you could show them X amount of places, and at the end of the day, their neighbor might be a realtor and they end up working with their neighbor because they find out last minute. Like, those things happen. And that's happened to me before with banks or even with other brokers, unfortunately. And I think that taught me the lesson is you just can't count your chickens until they hatch, like, literally. And that's a cliche, but like, when you're first starting out, like, you're trying to get any business you can, you're obviously trying to make money. And sometimes you're like, oh yeah, this is going to be it. This is going to be a deal for me. And you're keeping track of it. And then all of a sudden, the last plan on your paycheck. Don't spend money before you have it. That's yeah, exactly. But I think the lesson was that it's not done till it's done. Like, and no matter what you do and no matter how good your service is, things can happen. But don't let that discourage you from giving that same service to the next person. Don't assume the worst in people, assume the best. Give them that same service. Jeremy speaks to that, and I bring that up because we're in his office, not literally, but we're in his brokerage today. And yeah, it's just, treat every client the same, regardless how big that transaction is for you from a commission standpoint. Not everything's going to work out, but you still got to treat people the same way, and yeah, just stick with it.
Yeah, I would say that my lesson is kind of something similar, and I'm very fortunate. Like, when I was new, one of the things I really tried to do was meet and chat with people that did business that I respected, or that did things the way that I would want to do things. And I would just like basically take them for a coffee, or just like have a phone call with them and be like,
Right.
What can I absorb from you, and that I can apply? And one of my good buddies, Connor Redmond, I'm sure he'll get tagged in this. And one of the things that he kind of shared with me is like, be helpful, provide value to people, but also don't be afraid to say like, hey, like, I'm happy to be available. I'm happy to have conversations with you. But once it gets to a certain point, and obviously with, regulatory stuff, like, we're supposed to be doing this anyway, but also don't be afraid to be like, hey, look, like, I'm happy to answer general real estate questions for you, but this is kind of crossing into the line of like, hey, we should, formally be working together.
Right.
And just don't be afraid to like formally ask for the business. It sounds jazzy, but sometimes people will canvas opinions, and you can respond to those accordingly.
Yeah.
But also don't be afraid to like, hey, like, this is putting, you're asking a lot of details here. And if you want to formally engage me and work together, I'm happy to do that. But, this is kind of getting into that lane. So just don't be afraid to like ask for the business. And that was really great advice, because one of the things that you talked about is, you thought you had something that you were going to be working with, and then something changed. And obviously sometimes scenarios that happens, but you can kind of nip that in the butt if you, just be forward of like, hey, look, like, I'm happy to help you, but I think that we need to formally engage each other here so that we're on the same playing field. And if that person is against that, well, I think that kind of answers your question in the first place of like, whether or not they're going to be working with you. Or
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's really well said. I think we'll do two more here.
Yes.
Because I want to wrap this up. So I'm going to throw this one to you, because I would say you're more involved in this, in terms of like, you probably get more out of books and podcasts. So the question is, favorite book or podcast that's helped you with your business? I dabble in this a little bit, but not necessarily as much as you do. So I'm going to throw this to you. And the reason is I want some time to think about it. So now I'm going to be completely honest with you. So please go ahead.
Again, going back to Alex Ramosi and Chris Williamson, they have a couple, Chris has a couple podcasts with Alex that have just been like, I've just absorbed so much info from. And one of the best pieces of advice I think I got from those is just like, work hard, put the work in. It's not just going to magically happen for you. I have in my office, I have a couple frames and photos that I've had done, and I actually designed one with a Hormozy quote on it. And it says volume negates luck. And what that means basically is do so much work that it would be unreasonable for you to not succeed.
Right.
So, I go back to that in day one, if you're listening to this, because that's kind of the audience that probably is, make sure you're doing your open houses each week. Make sure you're doing social posts. Do long form content. People that you meet at open houses, follow up with them. Do a newsletter. Door knock your listings. Reach out to people that you've worked with. Like in 15 seconds there, I've named 7 things that you can be doing in order to help more people.
Right.
Just do so much work that it would be unreasonable for you to not succeed, because if you aim for the moon, you'll still land among the stars if you
You don't need luck to succeed, right?
Yeah, you're doing so much that would be unreasonable for you to not succeed. Like, not a basketball player, but I remember watching a reel or something the other day where it was like Steph Curry, I think he shoots 500 shots minimum every single day.
Right.
So you see him go out and do crazy things as a professional athlete, but it's like, does so much work that in the hour that it's time to shine, he's prepped everything already. Like, everything is done beforehand. So I just think a lot about that. Like, put the work in. It's not easy. It's business. It's life. Don't take the easy route. Just a lot of advice like that. And those have been life-changing podcast episodes that I've listened to. How about for yourself?
Yeah, from a podcast standpoint, I think the first podcast I really ever got into, it's called Mind Pump. Have you ever heard of it? No, it's these 3, I think they're all personal trainers. They one day they're like, we see that the podcast industry is growing, and they completely stopped doing what they did in terms of being trainers, from my understanding, and they started a podcast. It's become really successful. Does it necessarily relate to our business? No, but there's just some very interesting insights on the podcast that kind of first got me into podcasting. That's kind of why I bring that up, because obviously my favorite podcast is a Full Subjects podcast, but
Of course, I should have mentioned that.
Yeah, of course, right.
The one listening to us 4 times when I drive around today.
Yeah, exactly. I just keep playing our same episodes over and over again, and in the background, I'm just like, why did I say that? Oh, yes. No, that's terrible. I don't do that. The other podcast that I'd say I dabble with the most is probably Diary of a CEO. That's probably the one I've listened to more than
Stephen Bartlett. Yeah, right. Another great podcast. I could go on I could go on a 3-minute rant of podcasts that I've listened to that have been great.
Yeah, there's
definitely of us up there.
That's a great one. You can kind of choose the different guests that you want to listen to. Those are the big ones. I mean, I've read a lot of different books. Rich Dad Poor Dad is going to be the one that, most people have probably heard, or in this industry have probably all read. I think that's maybe the first actual real estate specific book I read. There's some good insights in there for sure. Atomic Habits is a great one in terms of, you spoke about this before, is about habit building a little bit. And there's some great insights in that book. I've read a lot of different books. I don't know if there's one specifically that's helped with my business, but I think that's the point of engaging with this content, is you pick up small things here and there. I think it was Ty that said I don't remember the specific book, but there's certain books that he's read like over and over and over and over again. And that's one thing I haven't done always a good job of, because I think there's books now that I'd want to go back and read and be like, there's things I remember about this, but there's probably other things that I missed. So I think that's where I'm at now in my book journey, is probably trying to read some books again and trying to gain some of that information back. Let's do one more question here. I'm not going to ask you what your question is for the next person on the show. I'm actually going to ask you, because we actually have one question on here that one of our guests asked. It's, what's your business exit strategy, your entrepreneurial exit strategy?
Yeah, I think that's a great.
We're both pretty young, so
yes,
we're not thinking about that yet, but
yeah, I think in a perfect world, I genuinely love what I do. I don't know if and it's easy to say now, but like, I don't know if I'll necessarily retire.
Right.
I genuinely don't know. One thing I've chatted with Emma, my wife, about is, maybe it's something where, we've interviewed Brayden before, and he's working with his dad.
Right.
Maybe it's, I would love where maybe I'm leaving a business in some capacity to my kids, for sure. Like, that'd be pretty special. Maybe maybe that morphs into something else, for sure. Maybe that's a different business that's real estate adjacent. I genuinely love what I do. I'm not just saying this because I'm on a podcast that we're recording right now. I genuinely love it. It's easy to say that you'll work forever, but I genuinely don't feel like I'm working. This is a ton of fun every time we sit down and do this. I love real estate. I love helping people. I love everything that goes along with it. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a great question. Maybe it's leaving the business to my kids, or maybe I just never leave the business. How about for yourself?
Yeah, I don't think you necessarily have to have an answer to that right now. I also think that answer can change with time.
Next week, I'm going to be like, I'm done retiring. Kidding.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me is not necessarily the exit strategy, but getting the business to a point where it can almost run itself, or there's enough things in place where the business is easily transferable if it needed to be, where I'm the face of the business, if you will, but a lot of this behind the scenes things can happen without me. I think I want to get the business to that point, and then it'll be easier for me to answer that question, because then I'm like, okay, well, I can exit the business. Like right now, the exit strategy is throw it aside and that's it, right? Like it's gone. Like I don't feel that I'm at a point where I can just hand it over. But I don't know. Like it's hard. I've thought about this more recently because now, again, we're both dads, and we don't know what life's going to look like. We don't know how long our kids are going to continue to live with us. We don't know what's going to happen with our spouses. Like there's so many factors at play in terms of what's going to happen. And I don't mean like that in a negative way. I just mean that
life changes very quickly.
Yeah, it does. And you might think now, like, yeah, by 50, I need to retire. It's like, well, you might want to slow down at 50, like you said, but you may not want to retire, or you may want to take on other endeavors, right? So I think it's getting to a place where I feel financially comfortable enough to make that decision. And then that conversation becomes a little bit more realistic. That's where I'm at right now. And feeling comfortable with being able to give enough of my time to the people that want my time, and not feeling like I have to put all the time into business and not be able to be available for people. Like, I think that's the biggest thing. And when you're an entrepreneur, you typically don't stop. You just find different ways to do what you're already doing, or you add to it and do other things as well. So I think retirement's changed a lot in terms of how it's structured. So that's where I would leave that.
Very well said. Well, it is time for us to wrap this episode up. Thank you guys for joining us for another episode. Great to interview each other.
Yeah, it's fun.
And we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks.